Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome back to News Dose. And did Microsoft's case to acquire Activision Blizzard just strengthen? Well, it might very well have, according to Microsoft's lead of communications, which claims they just got more evidence that the deal should indeed pass. So yeah, we'll get into that today, as well as the rough spot that game publishers currently find themselves in. They continue to push these live service games because, according to them, this is the next big thing, but it seems like gamers' wallets tells a little bit of a different story here. So we'll get into all of that as well, but before we do anything, make sure to hit those buttons below. Do like and subscribe if you enjoy the content. I am here every Monday through Friday, so come hang out and we'll discuss all things gaming. And in fact, actually hit those comments as well. I do read them all, including the one yesterday that called me a Sony pony. Really, I just like gaming, but hey, if it makes you feel better, call me a Sony pony, Xbot, or Nintendo drone, whatever you want to call me. I don't really care. It doesn't bother me. But hey, without any further ado, let's just go and jump right into things, starting off with PlayStation Plus, because, you know, I am a Sony pony, apparently. They did, however, announce their PlayStation Plus Essentials February lineup, which includes Evil Dead the Game, Ollie Ollie World, Destiny 2 Beyond Light, and then also Mafia Definitive Edition. I'd say this is actually a pretty decent lineup overall. I'd say all four of these games are at least worth checking out if you haven't already. Also, Sony is making use of Bungie here. It's still almost kind of hard to believe this, but Destiny is technically a PlayStation first-party game now, and it's kind of cool seeing them make use of the acquisition here. The bigger story, though, is that they also announced that the PlayStation Plus collection, which houses 19 beloved PlayStation 4 games, including first-party releases like God of War, Uncharted 4, Ratchet & Clank, among several others, will soon be removed from the service on May 9th. Now, this was always a pretty attractive addition to PlayStation Plus, especially, I'd say, for those new to the PlayStation brand. As an example, if you purchased a PlayStation 5 but didn't own a PlayStation 4, this is a great way to kind of catch up on some of their most beloved games from last generation. And I mean, there's some pretty great ones here. So to see a service like this leave soon isn't necessarily ideal. But, however, there seems to be some confusion over this announcement. This will actually affect future subscribers more in a sense that if you are currently subscribed, you can simply redeem these games now, and even after they're removed from the service, you can still play them just so long as you stay subscribed. So do make sure to add these games to your library before they leave. You don't even have to download them, just add them to your library. However, it does sound like that if you unsubscribe, you will then lose these games, so do just kind of keep that in mind going forward. Now, we also have a big new IP coming from EA here in just a few weeks on February 17th, being Wild Hearts. This is a game that goes into that monster hunting genre, which I'd say is definitely rising in terms of popularity with the last couple of Monster Hunter games. But considering this is an EA game that we're talking about, and really just because of how a lot of modern games work anymore, you can see how a game like this could maybe exploit microtransactions and things like that. Well, apparently that's not going to happen with Wild Hearts, as they've already confirmed it will not include microtransactions, and it can also be played completely offline. It's also been revealed that it will get free post-game content, as they plan to release new creatures over time, similar to what we've seen in games like, of course, Monster Hunter World and Monster Hunter Rise. This was all confirmed by some Wild Hearts representatives during a Reddit AMA session, but I mean, this game does continue to look, and really in this case also sound good. It seems like they're developing this game the right way, and I say if you like the monster hunting genre, Wild Hearts could potentially be a great game to pick up later this month. That's one of the great things about this release, though. If you are interested, they are offering a 10-hour trial to EA Play and Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscribers 4 days ahead of its official release. So if you are curious about Wild Hearts, you might want to check that out on February 13th. Now, we also got some new details, or really, I guess our first details on Insomniac's Wolverine. This is a leak coming from the often leaky Jeff Grubb, so as always, just take any leak with a grain of salt until officially confirmed. But according to him, he said he's been hearing they're shooting for a fall 2024 release. Now, at the same time, he did note that they're still talking internally, and it could be 2025, but either way, if Insomniac is able to do this, they are just pumping games out right now. I mean, if you think about it, just this generation alone, they've released Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, Spider-Man Miles Morales, and then also Spider-Man 2 is set to release later this year. That's 3 pretty significant releases since the PlayStation 5 first launched, and now we're hearing they could have a 4th as early as next year. I mean, whew, Insomniac is absolutely killing it right now. But continuing on, Jeff Grubb also said that Wolverine is not an open world game. It's more open section, similar to games like God of War. I'm perfectly fine with that. These type of games do tend to have great level design. And then also it sounds like it will be a mature rated title. Now, I know with a lot of Marvel IP, they try and keep those ratings down, but in Wolverine's case, it does make sense to make it more mature. Either way, it sounds like Wolverine might actually be coming sooner than some of us originally expected. Insomniac is really flexing by this point if all this turns out to be true. Okay, so let's just go and talk about this Xbox Activision Blizzard acquisition, as Microsoft is publicly making the case that the buyout just gained even more credibility. Yeah, this is coming from Microsoft's communication lead, Frank X. Shaw, which posted this up over on Twitter. He said, Sony, the main complainant to the Activision Blizzard deal, announced their financial results. This makes it clear why there needs to be more competition in a market they mainly control. Now, below this comment, you can see he attached Sony's very, very impressive quarterly report. We did talk a little bit about that yesterday. The PlayStation brand right now is absolutely soaring, but that's kind of the thing, because during the same time frame, Xbox struggled with many of the same metrics. You can actually take a look at Nib95's post here, which better shows a direct comparison between the two. As you can see, Xbox hardware was down by 13%, while Sony, they were up by a whopping 46%. That's a huge difference. You can also see something similar with services, where Xbox was down by 12%, all while Sony was up by 19%. Then the big one here, Xbox's total gaming revenue was down 13%, while Sony was up by 53%. So, yeah, Xbox didn't really have a particularly strong quarter. Yes, their Xbox Game Pass subscribers grew by an undefined amount, but they struggled in these other metrics here, and one part of that was because their lack of big first-party blockbusters. Now, they did have a few first-party releases like Pentiment and Grounded, but these aren't really your system sellers in the same way as something like God of War Ragnarok for the PlayStation 5, as an example. Now, to be fair, one of the reasons that this happened is because Starfield and Redfall were delayed. It would have been interesting to see how much their results would have improved if those games didn't get delayed, but that's not really how it played out here, and as of this moment, Frank X. Shaw is basically saying, hey, Sony's complained a lot about how vulnerable they are if we acquire Activision Blizzard, but this financial report certainly doesn't look like a vulnerable company to me. If anything, we, as in Xbox, looks more vulnerable. PlayStation, though, they look like a company that's absolutely dominating the market, all while we're still struggling. This actually fits right in line with some of the other arguments that they've made in the past, and to just kind of quote Microsoft's CEO, Satya Nadella here, if this is about competition, let us have competition. This seems to be what Frank X. Shaw is basically alluding to. That really, though, has been a centerpiece of this entire buyout, though. Sony has made a lot of complaints and accusations, and they've claimed that if Microsoft gets Call of Duty, then they just can't compete. The problem with that argument, though, is, well, first off, Microsoft has already offered a 10-year contract. That puts a dent into that debate, I'd say, but we'll go ahead and ignore that, I guess. But also the other problem is that Sony is the market leader by a pretty good margin. This isn't just a small lead. They're significantly ahead of Xbox, and historically that has been the case. So with all their accusations, Microsoft wants to know, where's any of the proof behind their claims? This is actually the exact reason why Microsoft previously sent Sony a subpoena. They want Sony to provide this so-called internal documentation that proves their claims. What's kind of interesting about that, though, is that Sony has extended or delayed that subpoena multiple times already. It sounds like they do not want to cooperate here, and that does kind of beg the question, are they trying to hide something, and do they even have this so-called proof, or have they just been disingenuous this entire time? That is something that we have asked as gamers for quite a while now. So yeah, with Sony lobbying regulators, Microsoft, they seemingly are firing back, all while lobbying the public. Let me know what you all think about this, though. Do you agree with Frank X. Shaw and that this is more reasoned that the buyout should be approved, or do you disagree? Maybe you think that the reasons Xbox is struggling is simply because maybe those delays. But let me know what you all think about all this in the comments below, and if you do disagree, let me know your reason as to why. For the final topic of the day, though, we're going to talk about the ongoing trend of live service games, or as I like to call them, your mythical cash cows. Now, the reason I call them that is because basically last generation, we had a few massive hits that just brought this insane amount of money to these different companies. That includes games like PUBG, Fortnite, Apex Legends, Warzone, and then also a few others to a lesser degree. So basically now you have companies chasing that trend in the hopes that they can create a similar success. But the problem with that line of thinking is that there's actually far more failures than there are success stories. These companies, they almost seemingly want to ignore that. And I mean, just look at Ubisoft right now. They plunged into live service games, they flopped, they canceled others, and now there's actual legitimate questions about their future. Some of the reason for that is because they focused so much on live service games that it ended up hurting the company. They're chasing that mythical cash cow just as other companies are as well. Something that everybody needs to kind of understand is that this is a highly competitive market, and because these games are designed to entice players for months or really even years at a time, it's just difficult to pry players away from these already well-established games like, again, Fortnite and Warzone. So what's happening now is that the uncertainty of this market is becoming more clear now than ever before. Of course, we've already talked about Ubisoft, but check this out. So Gamatsu posted this over on Twitter, and it says, live service games canned in the past weekish. Apex Legends Mobile, Battlefield Mobile, Crime Site, Crossfire X, Dragon Quest The Adventure of Dai, A Hero's Bond, Echo VR, Knockout City, Love Live, School Idol Festival, and then also Rumbleverse. That is a crazy amount of games that suddenly just drop support pretty much all at once, and what makes all this even crazier is that several of these games are not even all that old, or in some cases are coming from big, well-known franchises. I mean, you have Crossfire X on this list, and it came out less than a year ago. So this is kind of the issue with live service games. In a lot of situations, they seem high risk, high reward. I think that's why we're seeing some companies like Sony, as an example, make so many of these live service games all at once, just in the hopes that at least one will stick. So if they're making 10 live service games, and if just one of those sticks, that might make the risk worth it. We'll see if Sony finds success or not, but with just so many of these games shutting down now, you have to kind of wonder if this makes some of those companies think twice about these type of games going forward. Let's go take a look at the poll of the day, though, and with the recent news that Nintendo, Sony, and Xbox are reportedly skipping out on this year's E3, I wanted to ask you all, do you think we've seen the last of E3 as we once knew it? And I mean, as you can see here, the vast majority of you all do believe that's going to be the case, with 82% of you voting for yes, while only 13% of you voted for no. So I kind of feel like that this question has been looming for the last few years, but 2023, it feels a little different. I mean, we're kind of moving out of those years where these companies have to basically rely on digital events. I mean, they do have that option of going completely in person again, but they're choosing not to. And it seems like the reason for that is because, well, they can. Ultimately, and here's the thing, it's cheaper for these companies to just have their own showcases, and they've also proven that they can still get huge viewerships this way. They don't have to rely on the E3 brand or the big venues that they have to offer. At the same time, though, and this is something that was very evident from the comments, despite a lot of you saying, yeah, E3 is probably done, a lot of you all also said that you're going to miss it. It was the Gamers Holiday, the Gamers Super Bowl, and it probably won't be replicated with this new direction that game companies are taking. They're likely not all going to get together going forward where they have back-to-back-to-back showcases, especially with these in-person events. So I think that from that perspective, it is unfortunate for gamers in that sense. If this truly is the end of E3 as we once knew it, it will be missed by a lot of gamers, myself included. Anyways, though, that's it for this episode. But if you liked the video, don't forget to bell the notification and subscribe button for more content just like this. Also, if you'd like to support the channel through Patreon, thank you for making this content possible. Peace out.